Hello, and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
Detroit, which is about the 1967 Detroit riots, which I hadn't heard of before today. Had you?
No, actually. I'd heard of Watts, obviously. Yeah, kind of when you hear... I've heard of the riots in the 60s, but actually I hadn't had them associated with Detroit, specifically. But I did know of them. I think I might have read about them when I read Aretha Franklin's biography or something. I'm sure it's come up. I'm sure I knew there were riots in Detroit in the 60s. But when I think of, the black riots in the 60s, I do think of others and not necessarily Detroit.
So it's set during these riots. You see the riots kind of explode from a fairly simple start, which is basically cops interrupting a private party, which is sort of a speakeasy type thing going on in a black neighbourhood.
Yeah, it's an after-hours party.
Yeah. One thing leads to another. A crowd gathers, a bottle gets thrown, and eventually, eventually, it's in the opening scene.
Yes.
They start looting stores. The army gets brought in, I think, on the second day, and then the bulk of the film takes place in this essentially hostage situation, where these police kind of invade a hotel where some shots have been coming from, and they want to know who shot the gun, and it becomes this very disturbing, very tense situation where these cops who are out for blood and incredibly violent, you've seen one of them murder someone in cold blood already, have all these black people with their hands up against the wall, and they're taking them into various rooms, threatening them, trying to get information. It's kind of an interrogation, but it's not that honest.
Yes.
It's very vicious.
The film is really timely, right? The whole of the last year has been full of police brutality against black people in the United States.
Not just the last year. It's been going on for a while.
It's been going on for a while.
I can't remember who said it. Someone said on a talk show a little while ago that police violence against black people isn't happening more often. It's just being filmed. Because everyone has mobile phone cameras.
Yes, I would have expected it myself to have increased during Obama's tenure.
Well, I don't know that he was making a statistical statement when he said that, but the point is that it's getting seen more. That's the main point.
It's getting seen more, and it's never gone away. And I think the film dramatizes it beautifully. It dramatizes, that sense of power that the cops have, and also, the arrogance that they have with that power. And then, that kind of fear mixed with a kind of hatred that people experience at the sight of their powerlessness or during the experience of their powerlessness, right? Those corridor sequences, I think, were full of that, right? On the one hand, freaking out because they might kill you, and on the other hand, hating them for it, and on the other hand, having to be respectful. All of that kind of happening simultaneously. Yeah. I thought the film was great at doing that, and actually, I think the two. So the film is really structured around. Well, I see it as two protagonists.
I think three.
Three.
Well, three, possibly four. You've got John Boyega, who plays this security guard.
Yes.
He's one, and he's kind of with the police, almost with the police and the National Guard and the army. The army are the National Guard. He's not one of the guys who's being up against the wall.
I see his role more complexly. So basically,
okay, go on.
Yeah, he's the black guy who's trying to save the other black guys who are under terrible police threat by A, being witness, and B, being appeasing and being like a voice of reason in a very emotional, volatile, violent situation.
Yeah. He's called an Uncle Tom very early on
Yes.
by one character, and that's a very simplistic way of looking at his character, but it gives you the
so he's the
impression.
Uncle Tom who saves that man's life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, so that's his role. On the other hand, you have Will Poulter, who is, the nasty, arrogant white cop who basically feels he's got a right to do anything he wants. And he's very arrogant with it. He's really quite extraordinary, I think.
His look, visually, he's evil. He's got these eyebrows that kind of arch up like the horns.
He's fantastic. I mean, the courtroom sequences where you get to see that mixture of arrogance and violence and threat, all without a word being said. He's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. So those are the main two. Those are the two that you're thinking of as the protagonists. Those are
Yeah, I think the film
characters.
posits them as antithetical. One is almost the antithesis of the other, right? Because the John Boyega character is playing by the rules, really, at all times. Partly because he's forced to, partly because he wants to rescue a situation. The other one, who wears a badge, is making up his own rules, right? In his own interests all the time. So it's kind of like a very interesting kind of structural kind of opposition that there has going on there. And the other two, which could be called protagonists, is the veteran, and the singer.
I actually wasn't going to say the veteran. I was going to say the singer and the singer's friend. But it becomes an ensemble piece once you get past those first two.
Yeah.
There are other people caught up in this. So there's this singer in a band.
Yes.
His friend, who is one of the band members' brothers, I think, who's with him. You got these two white girls who are in the hotel.
Yes.
Who are hanging out with the veteran.
Yes.
The veteran's played by the veteran's one of the only ones that you might recognise. Anthony Mackie. That's him. Yeah.
Who's also very good.
Yeah, he is.
And actually, I thought the film treated the sexual politics. So basically, what happens is, there are these two girls from Ohio, and it's 1967, they say. So they're partying with these black guys in this motel. They've just presumably stopped for the night, but they're with the other guys, and there's food happening, and maybe who knows what else. And certainly, the situation is quite sexual before the police intervene, right? And then from then on, the film treats the whole sexual taboo of of white women with black women,
men,
but with black men, really in a really interesting fashion. I mean, that kind of gives rise to all kinds of threat, and it really reminded me of I think Greimas. There was an article called the political unconscious of American cinema, and the political unconscious of American cinema was meant to be race, and the author, whose name I now forget, who did that analysis, did this quadrangle, and he says it all arises from slavery. And so basically, a white man has sexual access to everyone, so to black men and to white women and to black women. A white woman has sexual access to everyone that she wants, except the white man, who has more power. So she needs consent from the white man, and the black women have to be sexually available to everyone. Anyway, and then the same article puts these kinds of taboos, and the biggest taboo is white women with black men, right?
Yeah.
And so kind of the film plays on all of that, how the mere sight of a black man and a white woman, how that affects the police's view of the women, of the men, right? It leads to more violence for the men. It leads to the women being treated, terribly.
Well, they're believed to be hookers.
Yes.
And Anthony Mackie's supposed to be their pimp.
That's
and
right.
Of course, he's denying it. He's saying, "No, I'm a veteran. I've just come back from the war." Yeah. And when he shows them his card, their response is, "That's a fake."
Yeah.
It takes them a long time to eventually come around to the idea that he might be telling the truth about that.
Yeah, but I think the film is more damning than that, because you realize, that in America, it doesn't matter if you're a vet on 2 tours of duty, if you've been serving the U.S. Army for 8 years, if you're black, it doesn't matter at all if you're confronted with a white cop who wants to do something.
Yeah, exactly. Weirdly, it reminded me to quite a large extent of Dunkirk, in that the central portion of the film is this. It's based on real events. One thing, it's based on a real situation. and it combines a number of characters in the same situation and kind of puts them in this pressure cooker. And at one point, you really feel that the objective is just to survive.
Yes.
Like rather like Dunkirk, except that the threat in Dunkirk is more sort of not ambiguous, but it's over the hill, you know. Whereas this is the guy is right there.
Yeah.
And it's
and also the threat in Dunkirk is shared, whereas here it's divided. You know, like the cops have the power, and then the rest. There are gradations. I think Kathryn Bigelow is such a great director because she conveys that so well. So, for example, there are gradations within the cops, right? There's the Will Poulter character who's very nasty. Then there's another one, who knows the rules, who kind of is seedy enough, to bend, and then there's the other one who's totally clueless, right?
Well, I think the second one is just as bad, really, but he's doing what he's told.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the kind of leadership skills that Will Poulter does, put it that way.
Well, I'd see it as kind of slight gradations, because you get the feeling at the end of the film that he confessed, actually. That he was the one who confessed rather than...
Yes.
So, but then you also have other gradations. So you have... What were they called? The guy in the other uniform who witnesses and says, the National Guard.
National Guard. Well, you get the feeling... There's actually... I don't know about the real-life events, but you do get the feeling from this film that no matter what happens... In Kathryn Bigelow's eyes, the army is unimpeachable. You get the feeling that they can't do anything wrong as far as she's concerned.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but in this film at least, you have the police, you have gradations amongst the police, then you have the difference between the police and the National Guard, you have like the difference between, when they're at the party and the guy draws the fake gun and starts shooting. I mean, that's a very, very tense scene, and you think this guy's an asshole, he's a dick, really. Like, so actually it makes kind of, I don't know, each of the characters seems to have almost like different positions, really. So I just think in a way it's a great film. Or rather, Kathryn Bigelow is such a great director that she can do this, really. The film has not been a hit.
Has it not?
No.
This is where we go to the box office.
Yes.
$34 million budget, and it's made half of that so far.
Yeah. And actually, I think a film like this, which is so good, not finding an audience at the moment is almost like further proof that Black lives really don't matter, right? That kind of, the sense of Black history in America is not seen to be important enough. I mean, had it been a similar situation with white people, you could imagine this being like the discussion film of the season, really. And this film really deserves to be that. And somehow,
especially in the last couple of weeks with all this stuff about the Confederate statues and
exactly, it's like the most timely film,
Trump supporting the Nazis.
I mean, what more do you want?
But I wonder how it's been advertised, because I haven't got the sense that... I think they could have turned this into a much bigger film than it might be. I don't know.
I don't know.
I feel like if you can't push a film like this right now, you should lose your job in marketing.
Yes, well, I don't know.
Although it is 2.5 hours long.
Or, it could be telling us something. It could be telling us that, this is something that really kind of America doesn't want to confront at all. It doesn't want to touch it. It's too difficult, it's too complex, they don't want to deal with it. And it's a shame, because I think the film deals with it really beautifully and really complexly.
Yeah. What I was hesitating about earlier when you asked me what I thought of it was the final third of the film, essentially, because I didn't anticipate, I never do anticipate what's going to come next.
Yes.
And I didn't expect the film to go into the consequences and the aftermath of that night in the detail that it does.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it would maybe leave it there. I thought maybe characters would die and stuff, but there'd be it would be left after that night. But no, the film goes into quite a lot of detail about there's an internal investigation in the police as to whether these 3 cops murdered these guys. They try and pin it on John Boyega's character, these murders, because some characters do die. Some of the I think 2 of the guys that are in that hotel are murdered. So they try and pin that on John Boyega's character. They investigate whether the white cops have done it. There's a court case. There's a sleazy lawyer who comes in to try and get them off.
Yes.
And then when it's doing that, I'm spending the whole time thinking, what are the consequences going to be? Because I had no idea. I didn't know what the story was. So
I didn't know what the story was either.
If this is a good film, these guys get away with it. If this is not a good film, then they don't get away with it and they get their comeuppance. And I was really hoping that it would be a bad film because I really wanted them to get their shit handed to them.
Yes, I did as well. And they do get away with it.
Yeah.
That said, however, I still do think that whole bit of the film doesn't work for me. You know,
yes.
It's very well done, but actually I thought it was kind of unnecessary, right? Like, you know, the film could have ended when they all came out of the motel, and you could have slapped on some information, you know, and finished the film there, really.
Yes, I don't think he would have lost an awful lot, unfortunately. There are points, like you said, with Will, what's his name's character, standing up in court, and just the look of him in court is disgusting. It turns your stomach. Yeah, that's kind of valuable in itself.
It is valuable. I mean, don't get me wrong.
The point is that the end of the film, the final third of the film, does have its moments, but there's not enough in there to carry the rest of the film. Really.
Yeah. So I think it could have been shorter. On the other hand, there are so many beautiful things about it, and so many, like, I don't know how to describe it, just clever things. You know, like the way that the film begins with those naive paintings, you know, that are like a history of migration to Detroit. I love that. Yeah.
Naive paintings?
Yes, that's what, you know, kind of...
Oh, is that actually...
It's a term that's used for, you know, paintings that aren't professional, that somebody who is untrained, you know, but nonetheless kind of often do very beautiful pictures.
I beg your pardon? Didn't realise that was a phrase. Yeah. I thought you were saying native wrong.
No. So that whole opening sequence was fantastic.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
You know, I thought the scenes at the theater with the singers, you know, was also, it kind of brought alive, you know, the energy and the dynamism of black culture at that moment, really. I loved the soundtrack, and this might just... you know, be me, but though I loved when the Supremes were on stage. I actually thought that the songs of the Dramatics could have been better. Yeah, perhaps. So and I think the thing that I love the most, aside from, you know, about the film, is, aside from Will Poulter's character, is John Boyega, who I think is just fantastic, and I want to underline it because, you know, there were moments that he really reminded me of Sidney Poitier. You know, he has the same kind of calmness and integrity, you know, and kind of moral groundedness, right? But at the same time, you can tell everything he's feeling, right? So, yeah. You know, he's doing some actions that are very calm and cool and minimal, and yet in his eyes, you see, you know, like the panic and the fear and the attempt to do good, you know, kind of all at the same time. I just think it's an extraordinary performance, really. And one of the reasons why I'm sorry that you know, the film isn't doing very well is because, you know, I really do think that Poulter and he really deserve recognition. They're really kind of, you know, astounding performances. They are
really, really good. But there is something to be said. Was it Samuel L. Jackson who was saying a little while ago that he was pissed off with British actors doing American roles?
Yes.
Because Will Poulter and John Boyega are both British.
Yes.
And they're doing, not only are they doing American roles, but they're doing American roles of real people in a real situation where they don't have that history, they don't share that kind of cultural baggage. Yes. They're not from that country. I think there's something to that.
I think there's something to that. I mean, I've discussed it with friends, and, you know, I think there's a kind of idiotic patriotism, really, that my friends have. You know, because they never see a problem when it's British people doing other people. They always seem to have a problem when it's other people doing British people. Like the accent's never good enough, or, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But actually, I think there's a thing about lived knowledge and experience, and, you know, kind of the thing that actors bring to us is like this accumulation of detail of stuff that they learn and transmit. and have a greater access to feeling and conveying, and a lot of that is unconscious things.
Yeah.
So I actually do think that it makes a difference. I presume that the casting director and the director, kind of, checked the available American actors and made a decision. But I do always think that that's always
it's not the first time as well, is it? Because David Oyelowo, I believe, David Oyelowo played Martin Luther King in Selma.
Yes.
And that was I don't remember if anyone made a fuss about that, but it's the same sort of thing.
If someone tells you that a country with a population of 300 million people, cannot
produce
find
the
an actor, to play a role, I just don't believe it. I think it's kind of laziness, really. But let's put that aside.
But having said that, there's also an element of when American actors play British, I think it happens not nearly as often as British actors playing American. I think that happens far more. They're really dominant.
You see, what Americans bring to these British movies is box office. So what's her name? When Gwyneth Paltrow does Jane Austen, she gets the film made. Really.
Yeah.
When these British actors perform in American films, like, all they have to bring with them is the performance. That's all. And actually, I just cannot believe that they can't get the same level of performance from an American actors in a country that large, with as many acting schools and actors training and spread all over the country as America has. I think it's kind of laziness.
Well, yes, it's just.
I think it's just producers go, L.A., London, New York, never bother to look elsewhere across America, and actually don't even do New York outside of Broadway probably very well. It's a problem. But it's not a problem for this film.
British actors are better. That's just what it is. British actors are better at the job.
Oh, fuck off! I think that might be a good note to end.
No, there are. No, you're right. You are right insofar as while this is, it's something I noticed a lot since that was first brought up to me. Just how many British actors are in America playing American, and you go, this is just every single thing. There isn't a single film where this isn't happening.
Yes.
To the point where it's really annoying me. But in this film, it's really not a problem. They are excellent, and whether other people could have done it just as well, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. In this film, they are excellent.
They're excellent,
and they make it.
And actually, I do think that Boyega, because you see, just to make a prediction or whatever, the thing about Poulton is he's superb, right? But the thing about Boyega is that he's superb. And he's got something else. Like, I could see him becoming a big star, really,
Well, he is in Star Wars.
The parts.
He is in the new Star Wars.
Yes.
So he's a big-ish star. He's kind of being turned into one as we speak.
Yeah.
Because he's the new he's the new Luke Skywalker, really.
Well, I hope he becomes one, actually. And I hope that Poulter gets an award or two during the award season.
There is one other thing which is... that I wanted to bring up, which is the opening of the film does something which Kathryn Bigelow has annoyed me with before. The opening of the film is this long animated sequence that we've spoken about, the naive paintings, which I've heard of and know everything about. And it kind of tells a brief history of black people in America up to the 1960s, where they move into... move north? The Great Migration.
Yes.
Move north and... end up kind of surrounded in these neighbourhoods, and it all kind of starts boiling over.
Yes.
But there's one point in it where, because it's done in subtitles, it's not narrated. It's done in subtitles at the bottom of the film or text over the images. And at one point, it says something like African Americans discovered that equal opportunity was an illusion. And then the whole sentence fades out, apart from was an illusion. That remains on screen. And that annoys me. Because she did the same thing in The Hurt Locker, where there's some quote, and it says, blah, 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 war is a drug. For war is a drug, it says. And then it all fades out, apart from war is a drug. And you go, why did you need to keep that bit on screen? Can I not read? It has this element of not showing any faith in me as an intelligent observer to just get the point.
I don't know, what annoys me...
Actually, I think that might have something to do with the whole end of the film, where all of this stuff that happens in court and in the police station is dramatised, but it doesn't show you anything that you wouldn't expect. The whole story, everything that takes place towards the end of the story is very predictable, which is not to say that it shouldn't have happened or they should have changed it or something. Obviously, that's a story that should have been told, but there's no kind of point to dramatising it, as we said, when you could get the same effect by writing it down.
Yes.
And I think it has this element of not letting it go, having to explain to just that little bit, to just slightly more than is necessary.
I think that's true. I think she's got a tendency to also make her films too long. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Strange Days. Yeah, but even as I am, and I do think it's kind of a masterpiece, really. But it also feels like it doesn't know when to end, right? It's got like, it could have ended like in 3 different places, that film. So I think, that might be an issue with her as a director. But what really annoys me about, Kathryn Bigelow is that she hasn't received the recognition that she has, that she deserves. I mean...
Well, she got Best Director.
She got Best Director Oscar once. She's made all of these movies that are real landmark movies that are almost all reinventions of particular genres. So kind of Near Dark and Blue Steel, and then that fantastic surfer movie with Keanu Reeves.
Point Break.
I mean, kind of, it's an extraordinary body of work, really. And she's had she's only occasionally had box office success, and only relatively mild at that, right? The Hurt Locker would be an example. And even that, I remember when it came out, it was one of the lowest earning, Best Picture movies ever or something.
Obviously, I'm finding out how much it made. It made $50 million against a budget of $15 million.
Yeah,
so made its money, but not a huge hit.
Yeah, so it's she has I think an interesting career to me as a real film artist, really, as somebody who's done all of this kind of extraordinary work, and I'd like her to be talked about in as serious a way as kind of at least somebody like Steven Soderbergh, really. And I think of all the films that we've seen or that I've seen this week, really, which includes, Logan Lucky, and what's it, American Made? Made in America.
American Made.
I mean, this is like a completely different level of filmmaking.
I mean, let's not beat around the bush. It's unmissable.
Yeah,
it is.
Okay.
For all its flaws, and it has a few, but it's
so unmissable and with some fantastic performances.
Yeah, and really relevant, and but to me, she will always be Mrs. James Cameron.
Fuck off, you sexist pig. This is a good note to end on.